It was a warm August morning in 1997 when Tom Miller packed the family SUV with camping gear, fishing rods, and supplies for a weekend getaway into the Colorado Rockies. His son, Ethan, couldn't stop talking about catching his first trout. They waved goodbye to their neighbors and promised they'd be back by Sunday evening. But as the day wore on, the clock ticked past their expected return, and there was no sign of them. The Miller family grew uneasy, calling friends and relatives, but no one had seen them on the route or heard from them. The first red flag came when Tom's brother drove past the trailhead where the Millers were supposed to start their hike. The SUV wasn't there. At first, the family tried to reassure themselves. Maybe they were running late, maybe they had decided to camp somewhere off the map. But as night fell and the cell phones went unanswered, panic began to set in. Local law enforcement was called, and a small search began near the usual trails. But the terrain was unforgiving. Steep cliffs, dense forests, and winding streams made it nearly impossible to track anyone. As search teams combed the area, they found scattered remnants of camping gear, a single boot, a broken lantern, and some food wrappers. But none of it led to Tom or Ethan. Even the footprints that were discovered seemed to vanish abruptly, as if the father and son had simply walked into thin air. Hikers reported seeing strange shadows among the trees, but no one could confirm what they were. The wilderness was silent, except for the distant rustle of the wind through the pines, which only added to the eerie sense that something unnatural had taken place. Within 48 hours, local media picked up the story, and the disappearance became a sensation across the region. Television crews aired the missing posters, showing Ethan's bright eyes and Tom's familiar smile. Volunteers joined organized searches, combing the mountains with dogs, drones, and even helicopters. Yet, despite the exhaustive efforts, there was no trace of the Millers' SUV or their whereabouts. Speculation ran wild. Some believed it was a tragic accident, while others whispered darker theories involving foul play or a mysterious stranger lurking in the woods. By the end of the first week, frustration and fear had replaced hope. The police expanded the search radius, but the vast wilderness offered no answers. Each lead seemed to dissolve like mist in the mountains. Families in neighboring towns looked over their shoulders, and local children whispered about the missing father and son in hushed tones. Even decades later, the story of that August morning, the sudden disappearance, the abandoned gear, the unending silence of the Rockies, remains etched in the minds of those who remember it, haunting the quiet corners of the town with unanswered questions. When the news of Tom and Ethan Miller's disappearance hit the town, it spread like wildfire. The Millers were not just any family, they were pillars of the community. Tom had served as a firefighter for over a decade, earning the respect of everyone who knew him. Ethan was the kind of boy who brightened any room, always eager to help neighbors with chores or play baseball in the local park. Their sudden vanishing left the entire town paralyzed with disbelief. Parents worried about their own children, friends refused to believe that something so terrible could happen so close to home, and the town's small sense of safety was shattered overnight. Neighbors organized vigils and search parties, scouring every inch of the surrounding wilderness, calling out Tom and Ethan's names into the dense forests. Local churches held prayer meetings, and the community rallied as if one mind shared a single hope of finding them alive. Volunteers distributed flyers on street corners and in grocery stores, displaying Ethan's innocent smile and Tom's familiar face. But despite the goodwill and tireless efforts, there was nothing, no trace of the SUV, no footprints leading to safety, and no sightings that could be confirmed. The emptiness only grew heavier as the days stretched into weeks. Rumors began to spread, each more chilling than the last. Some whispered about a car accident on a hidden trail. Others feared the presence of a stranger in the area. Stories circulated about eerie lights spotted near the woods in the days following the disappearance, and some locals swore they saw a figure watching from the tree line. Every tip was pursued, every lead investigated, yet nothing concrete emerged. The combination of fear, uncertainty, and relentless silence cast a shadow over the entire town. People stopped taking evening walks, and children were kept close to home. The media coverage amplified the town's anxiety. Newspapers published headlines like "Father and Son Missing in Colorado Mountains," and TV channels aired segments showing volunteers combing the terrain. Calls flooded into law enforcement from across the state, offering assistance, tips, and sometimes wild theories. Yet the authorities were baffled. The terrain was rugged and unforgiving, the trailheads confusing, and the SUV and its passengers seemed to have simply vanished into thin air. Each day without answers deepened the sense of helplessness and fear. As weeks turned into months, the town struggled to cope with the unresolved mystery. Every rustle in the forest or distant car engine could spark hope or dread. Families whispered cautionary tales to their children, warning them to stay away from the woods. Even in the quietest moments, a heavy tension lingered over the town, the unsettling feeling that something dark had entered their lives and refused to leave. The disappearance of Tom and Ethan had transformed a peaceful community into one gripped by fear, suspicion, and a haunting sense that the unknown was still out there, waiting. In the first days after Tom and Ethan Miller vanished, investigators combed the area near the trailhead, determined to find even the smallest clue. They discovered faint tire tracks on a dirt road leading into the forest, the imprint of the SUV's tires almost hidden beneath fallen leaves and loose gravel. Investigators assumed these tracks might lead them to the missing father and son. But after hours of tracking, the trail ended abruptly, swallowed by thick underbrush. It was as if the SUV had vanished into thin air, leaving the team to wonder whether the Millers had walked away from it, or if someone, or something, had taken them. Searchers also found a broken camping lantern lying near a stream. Its glass shattered, yet the body of the lantern appeared carefully placed, almost deliberately. Nearby, footprints were discovered, one set large, one small, presumably Tom and Ethan. But they, too, disappeared without a trace. The terrain was rough and steep, yet the sudden vanishing of these tracks puzzled experts. They scoured every ridge and ravine for signs of an accident, but no SUV, no blood, no personal belongings, nothing that would confirm what had happened. Each dead end deepened the mystery and frayed nerves in the town. Adding to the tension, locals who had hiked or driven near the area reported strange, unsettling experiences. Some claimed to have seen a flicker of movement among the trees late in the evening, too quick to identify. Others spoke of distant headlights on roads that were supposed to be empty, or a shadowy figure watching from the tree line. These accounts were impossible to verify, yet they fed the growing fear that the disappearance wasn't a simple accident. Something far more sinister might have been at play, hiding the Millers from the world in a way no one could understand. Weeks of intensive searches yielded little. Investigators brought in dogs, who could track scents for miles, yet even these highly trained animals lost the trail after just a few hundred feet. Every time the search teams believed they were close to a breakthrough, the evidence seemed to evaporate. Camping gear scattered across the forest floor, remnants of supplies, and torn pieces of clothing hinted at a struggle, but nothing could provide answers. Each clue that emerged seemed to lead in circles, increasing frustration and fear, making the case feel almost cursed. By the end of the first month, the story of Tom and Ethan had become a source of obsession for both the authorities and the town. Every rock, tree, and streambed had been examined, yet the SUV and the missing father and son remained elusive. The unanswered questions loomed larger with every passing day. Were they victims of an accident, an unknown assailant, or something inexplicable in the remote wilderness? The forest itself seemed to hold its secrets tightly, and those who searched began to feel the unnerving sense that the woods were alive with something watching, silent, patient, and impossible to outsmart. Years turned into decades, and the case of Tom and Ethan Miller slowly faded from public attention, until 2020, when the FBI decided to reopen it. Advances in technology and forensic science had made it possible to re-examine evidence that had gone cold for over 2 decades. A specialized task force was assembled, focusing on missing persons cases with unusual circumstances. Investigators pored over the old police reports, photographs of the scene, and even interviews from townspeople who had witnessed strange occurrences back in 1997. Every detail, no matter how small, was scrutinized with the hope of finding something that had been overlooked. The team brought in cutting-edge tools, drones equipped with thermal imaging, satellite data to analyze changes in the terrain, and forensic geologists who could identify soil and plant disturbances. Old maps were compared with satellite imagery to detect areas where the SUV might have been hidden. Even minor inconsistencies in witness statements were revisited, looking for patterns that could hint at the Millers' final location. It was painstaking work, but the FBI was determined. The thought that Tom and Ethan might still be recoverable kept the team working long hours, combing through every inch of the Colorado wilderness. As the investigation progressed, agents began to focus on a stretch of abandoned highway and a network of off-road trails near the mountains. Local residents were interviewed again, and some shared accounts of odd occurrences over the years: unexplained headlights deep in the forest, strange sounds at night, and sightings of shadowy figures. Some dismissed these as the imaginations of locals, but the FBI couldn't ignore them. Each piece of the puzzle, no matter how eerie or unlikely, was carefully examined. Slowly, A picture began to emerge of a father and son who might have been deliberately misled or trapped, rather than lost to a random accident. The task force also reviewed old search efforts and realized that the rugged terrain, combined with overgrown trails, had allowed a vehicle or person to go unnoticed for years. Using modern imaging technology, they scanned ravines and areas that had been nearly impossible to access in 1997. Drone footage revealed anomalies in the underbrush, shapes that could not be explained by natural formations alone. It was the first real sign that Tom and Ethan's SUV might still exist, hidden somewhere within reach but invisible to the earlier search teams. The suspense and anticipation among the agents grew, knowing they were close to uncovering something monumental. With every day of investigation, the tension intensified. Local media caught wind of the FBI's renewed interest, reigniting speculation across the state. Townspeople who had almost given up hope now watched the investigation with bated breath. The mystery that had haunted the community for over 2 decades was suddenly alive again, more terrifying and tantalizing than ever. Agents felt the weight of decades of unanswered questions pressing down on them as they prepared for what could be the most significant breakthrough since the Millers vanished. After months of painstaking investigation, the breakthrough finally came in late 2020. FBI agents, using advanced drone imaging and terrain analysis, spotted a dark, unnatural shape partially hidden in a ravine deep in the Colorado wilderness. The shape appeared metallic, yet its location made it nearly invisible from the ground. When the agents approached, their hearts raced. The SUV was unmistakably the Millers. Overgrown brush and fallen trees had concealed it for over 2 decades, as if the forest itself had tried to swallow it whole. The sight of the vehicle sent shivers down the spines of everyone present. It was both a discovery and a haunting confirmation of the years-long nightmare. The SUV was in a state of eerie preservation. The doors were locked, windows cracked but intact, and the interior still contained remnants of the Miller family's belongings. A camping lantern, some clothing, and a few scattered personal items lay exactly where they had been left, or perhaps carefully placed. It was immediately clear to the investigators that this was not just a simple accident. The location of the SUV, wedged between rocks and partially buried under soil, suggested deliberate concealment. Whoever had done this had gone to great lengths to ensure it would remain hidden for decades. As agents inspected the SUV more closely, unsettling details began to emerge. Inside, they found subtle signs of struggle, a bent seatbelt, scuff marks on the floor, and scratches along the interior door panels. These clues hinted at a desperate attempt to escape, a struggle frozen in time. Dust and leaves inside the vehicle indicated that it had remained untouched for years, yet some items, like Tom's worn notebook and Ethan's backpack, seemed deliberately positioned, almost as if someone had staged them for discovery or warning. Every agent on the scene felt the unnerving weight of history pressing down, the sense that this vehicle was a silent witness to something dark and incomprehensible. Nearby, forensic teams discovered traces of soil and debris not native to the ravine, suggesting that the SUV had not originally ended up there by accident. Tire impressions on a slope leading toward the ravine indicated that the vehicle had been driven, or forced, off-road before coming to rest in its hidden location. The thought that someone had intentionally moved the SUV into this secluded spot, knowing it would remain undiscovered for decades, added a chilling layer to the mystery. The investigators realized that Tom and Ethan's fate was more sinister than anyone had imagined, and the case was about to take a turn into the truly terrifying. Word of the discovery quickly reached the town and the national media, reigniting decades-old fears. Locals were both relieved and horrified. The sub's emergence confirmed that the Millers had not simply disappeared, but had been trapped, hidden, and forgotten in the wilderness. For the FBI, this was just the beginning. Inside that vehicle lay clues that could finally unravel the mystery of what happened to Tom and Ethan. Yet, as the agents examined the SUV under the harsh Colorado sun, there was an undeniable sense that the forest had kept its secrets far longer than anyone realized, and that uncovering them would reveal truths far darker than anyone in the town, or even the investigators, had anticipated. Once the SUV was secured, the FBI brought in forensic specialists to meticulously examine every inch of the vehicle and its surroundings. What they discovered sent chills down the spine of everyone involved. Dust and soil samples revealed a mixture of earth from distant locations, indicating that the SUV had not simply rolled off the road, it had been deliberately moved. Small fragments of tree bark and plant matter suggested it had been dragged through a dense, unseen forest path before reaching the ravine. The realization hit the team hard. Someone, or something, had carefully orchestrated the vehicle's concealment, ensuring it would remain undiscovered for decades. Inside the SUV, investigators found a small notebook belonging to Tom Miller, its pages yellowed but legible. The entries chronicled their weekend trip, starting innocently enough with fishing plans and hikes, but gradually the tone shifted. Tom wrote about strange sounds near the campsite, unexplained footprints, and fleeting shadows glimpsed at the edge of the tree line. On the final page, the writing became frantic, describing a presence that seemed to follow them wherever they went, always just out of reach. These journal entries offered a haunting glimpse into the fear the father and son had endured, and investigators couldn't help but feel the tension that had gripped them in their final hours. Further examination revealed subtle signs of struggle within the vehicle. Seatbelts were twisted, and scuff marks lined the doors and floorboards as if Tom or Ethan had tried to defend themselves. Clothing was scattered and partially trapped under the seats, and a fishing rod lay bent, as though thrown in a panic. Forensic analysts also detected traces of an unknown substance, small amounts of mud mixed with what appeared to be animal hair not native to the area, suggesting the presence of another being or entity during the Millers' final moments. Each discovery deepened the sense of horror, painting a picture of terror that had unfolded far from human eyes. Outside the SUV, investigators found additional evidence pointing to intentional concealment. Tire tracks on a narrow dirt path suggested the vehicle had been maneuvered off-road in a deliberate manner. Small depressions in the soil indicated that objects may have been placed around the SUV to camouflage it. Rocks, branches, even fallen logs that had over time become indistinguishable from the natural surroundings. The forest itself seemed complicit in hiding the SUV for decades. It became painfully clear that Tom and Ethan's disappearance was not a random accident, but a carefully staged event meant to erase them from the world entirely. Even the forensic anomalies added layers of unease. Soil samples contained microscopic particles from areas hundreds of miles away, meaning the SUV might have been transported from another location before being hidden in the ravine. Fibers from Ethan's backpack showed traces of plants unfamiliar to Colorado forests, as though he had carried them from somewhere else entirely. Every clue pointed to deliberate planning, manipulation, and perhaps even cruelty. The case had evolved from a tragic disappearance into a terrifying puzzle, one that suggested forces far beyond a simple accident had shaped the Millers' fate. Each new detail amplified the horror, leaving investigators, and the town, grappling with the realization that the truth was far darker than anyone had imagined. Even after the FBI recovered the SUV and examined every shred of evidence, the town of Evergreen, Colorado, remained gripped by unease. Locals whispered about the dark stretch of wilderness where Tom and Ethan had disappeared, calling it cursed or haunted. Some claimed to hear the echo of children's laughter late at night, or the soft thud of footsteps along the overgrown trails near the ravine. Parents kept their kids indoors after dark, and hikers avoided the forest entirely. The silence that once marked the mountains had been replaced by an almost tangible tension, as though the woods themselves remembered the horrors that had occurred there. Stories of unexplained sightings surged after news of the SUV broke. Residents reported strange lights moving through the trees, sudden cold gusts of wind in otherwise calm areas, and glimpses of shadowy figures at the edge of their vision. Some hikers swore they felt unseen eyes watching them from the forest. Even law enforcement officers admitted that walking the same trails where Tom and Ethan vanished gave them an unsettling feeling, a creeping suspicion that the forest had hidden secrets far darker than the human imagination could easily comprehend. Fear had become woven into the very fabric of the town. The discovery of the SUV reignited decades-old debates and speculation. Some townspeople believed an unknown assailant had stalked the Millers, a predator meticulous enough to hide a vehicle for more than 20 years. Others speculated about supernatural forces tied to the forest, pointing to the strange reports of lights and sounds before and after the disappearance. Psychologists and criminologists consulted on the case were equally baffled, admitting that the combination of deliberate concealment, forensic anomalies, and eerie local sightings created a scenario that defied logical explanation. The mystery, it seemed, had become larger than the evidence itself. Even today, the forest remains off-limits in many areas, as investigators continue to study the terrain and old tips from locals. Campsites are avoided, and abandoned trails are left to grow wild, as if the land itself is a silent witness unwilling to reveal its secrets. Some families have moved away entirely, unable to shake the sense of dread that still lingers over the town. Conversations in grocery stores or coffee shops often drift back to Tom and Ethan, and the question on everyone's mind remains: what really happened to them in those final, terrifying hours? The uncertainty continues to haunt both the community and the investigators alike. The Millers' disappearance, and the SUV's eventual discovery, have left an indelible mark on the collective memory of Evergreen. The case has become a cautionary tale, whispered from generation to generation, a story of how quickly normal life can be swallowed by the unknown. Even with modern technology and decades of investigation, the unanswered questions hover over the town like a shadow. The eerie silence of the forest, combined with the chilling evidence inside the SUV, ensures that the memory of Tom and Ethan's fate will linger, unseen but ever present, forever shaping the town and the people who live there. As the sun sets over the Colorado Rockies, the forest grows quiet again. The SUV sits hidden no longer, but the questions remain, questions that may never be answered. What truly happened to Tom and Ethan Miller in those final hours? Was it human hands that orchestrated their disappearance, or something far darker, lurking just beyond our understanding? The FBI has uncovered pieces of the puzzle, yet the full picture continues to elude even the sharpest minds. And while the town of Evergreen slowly returns to its daily routines, the shadow of that summer in 1997 lingers. The forest keeps its secrets close, whispering warnings to those who dare to enter. Some say the woods remember. Some say the cries of the lost still echo among the trees when no one is there to hear them. And perhaps, deep down, that is the most terrifying part of all, that even after decades, even after the SUV was found, the true fate of a father and son can remain a mystery, haunting anyone who dares to wonder. So next time you drive past a quiet forest road, or hear the wind rustle through the trees at night, remember this story. Some disappearances aren't just accidents, some are warnings. And the truth may never want to be found.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.